Billionaire husband uses business trip to date mistress pregnant wife's sudden arrival shocks him. Michael Harrington was the man every aspiring entrepreneur admired, young, dashing, and unbelievably wealthy. He had a gorgeous pregnant wife, Emily, who adored him, and a lavish home that spoke volumes of his success. On the surface, they were the portrait of marital bliss, but beneath the shimmering veneer of fast cars and opulent parties lay a dark secret. Each time Michael claimed to be traveling for business, he was actually rendezvousing with his alluring mistress in luxurious hideaways. Little did Michael know that this time his pregnant wife would appear unannounced. The stage was set for a shattering confrontation that no one would ever forget. Michael Harrington was born and raised in a quiet, suburban neighborhood in Westwood, California. Unlike many of his childhood friends who pursued ordinary 9-to-5 jobs, he had an unquenchable thirst for more. Even as a teenager, he dreamed of penthouse suites, private jets, and power deals. That hunger drove him to immerse himself in the world of startups, and by the time he was 25, he had co-founded a tech firm that skyrocketed in value. The company's IPO made Michael a millionaire almost overnight. Success didn't just invite money, it beckoned admiration. Everyone wanted a piece of Michael Harrington. Local newspapers labeled him the Westwood Wonderkind. Real estate mogul John Fitzgerald from Glendale approached him with lucrative partnership deals. His circle expanded rapidly, rotating around entrepreneurs, celebrities, and venture capitalists. Michael developed an eye for luxury. A top-floor penthouse in downtown Los Angeles, membership at the exclusive Bel-Air Country Club, even weekends at the opulent Ritz-Carlton. In the midst of this whirlwind, he met Emily Porter. She was a diligent architecture student at UCLA, working part-time as an assistant to a renowned interior designer. Their worlds couldn't have been more different. Emily's life revolved around modest pursuits and carefully planned budgets, while Michael's soared on ambition and wealth. But attraction has a way of upending expectations. At a friend's charity gala, Emily's reserved elegance caught his eye. She wasn't the type to fawn over his money or connections. She found conversation about creative spaces more interesting than talk of profit margins. Emily grounded him. Within a year, they were engaged. Emily's parents were initially reluctant about her marrying a man already heavily in the public eye. Rumors buzzed about the Playboy tech genius, and tabloids frequently spotted Michael with various socialites. But when the couple married in a picturesque ceremony in Napa Valley, the entire guest list agreed they were the epitome of modern love. A beautiful, grounded woman and a successful, charismatic man. The early months of marriage were blissful. Emily's gentle humor and quiet resilience seemed to tame Michael's restlessness. They moved into a stunning estate in the Hollywood Hills that Emily had meticulously decorated. This was more than a house. It was a dream made real, every room reflecting her artistic sense and his flair for sophistication. Friends and family who visited marveled at the synergy between them. But as Michael's business empire grew, so did the demands on his time. Business trips became a frequent occurrence. At first, Emily didn't question it. She knew her husband's success depended on networking, meeting partners, striking deals in different cities. Even during her pregnancy, she tried to remain supportive. She would gently kiss him goodbye, reminding him to take care of himself, and text her when he landed. Gradually, however, Emily noticed subtle changes in Michael. He seemed more guarded, keeping his phone close and locking it with a new password. There were unexplained charges on his credit card statements, fine dining bills from places she'd never heard of. Like Mastro's Ocean Club in Malibu on nights, he claimed to be out of town. If Emily asked about these inconsistencies, he'd brush her off with jokes or deflections. One afternoon, while cleaning his study to make space for the baby's future nursery, Emily discovered a jewelry box at the back of a locked drawer. Inside was a diamond necklace with an inscription, "To my queen, always." Emily's heart fluttered for a moment, assuming it could be a surprise gift, but then her eyes landed on the date etched inside the necklace case, a date that had already passed 2 months ago. With no special gift presented to her, she tried to rationalize. Perhaps Michael had planned a romantic surprise, and circumstances forced him to postpone. Still, an uneasy feeling settled in her stomach. Michael hadn't mentioned this piece of jewelry at all, and it was expensive enough, bearing the name of a high-end Beverly Hills jeweler, Connor and Brinley, that it wasn't something one would simply forget. That night, Emily prayed for clarity. She told herself not to jump to conclusions, that her pregnancy hormones might be intensifying her suspicions. Michael came home late, tiptoeing into the bedroom. Emily pretended to be asleep, but caught a whiff of perfume. It wasn't hers. Amid this creeping doubt, life pressed on with baby preparations. Emily was about 4 months pregnant, her small bump a constant reminder that her life was on the cusp of monumental change. She had friends like Rachel Connor from UCLA, who would reassure her that men under stress sometimes act oddly, and that everything would surely be okay. But Emily couldn't shake the gnawing worry. Something about Michael's business trips felt like a shimmering illusion, an illusion that, if exposed, could shatter everything they'd built. Michael Harrington had been careful. He prided himself on his ability to manage multiple facets of his life simultaneously: the visionary entrepreneur, the devoted husband, and, secretively, the passionate lover. Yet, every empire built on deception has cracks. In Michael's case, those cracks began to show the day he reconnected with an old acquaintance, Veronica Hale, at a high-profile tech conference in San Francisco. Veronica was no stranger to Michael's social circle. Years ago, they had flirted at a mutual friend's yacht party, but he was a newlywed at the time, and the spark was left unignited until that conference. Veronica was an ambitious PR consultant from Redwood City, known for her fierce determination and a figure that turned heads at every networking event. They exchanged business cards under the guise of possible collaboration. But once they realized how easily conversation flowed between them, how the jokes and flirtation came naturally, they decided to meet for dinner. It was meant to be a one-time indulgence in curiosity. Over a private corner table at the French Laundry in Yountville, an exclusive restaurant often booked months in advance, the two tested each other's boundaries. A shared bottle of fine Merlot turned laughs into lingering glances. The plush ambience of the restaurant, with its mood lighting and hushed chatter, cocooned them from reality. Michael found himself exhilarated by Veronica's audacity. She didn't see him as just a money-making machine. She pushed him to divulge secrets about his upcoming projects, teased him about his well-crafted public image, and challenged him in ways that made him feel alive. It was a far cry from the stable, safe environment he had with Emily. He felt like he was chasing a dangerous new high. Weeks turned to months, and dinners became weekends in boutique hotels. Veronica matched Michael's appetite for the best in life: penthouse suites at the Ritz, private rooftop bars in downtown La, and spontaneous flights to Las Vegas. This extravagant lifestyle fed their mutual fascination. Their relationship was propelled forward by the combined forces of lust, excitement, and secrecy. Of course, balancing this affair with his marriage was tricky. Michael relied on carefully crafted alibis: a friendly personal assistant named Thomas Rodriguez from Glendale, who would cover for him at the office, and a rotating schedule of meetings that no one else could attend. It was a high-wire act. One slip and everything could come crashing down. Veronica, for her part, was no shrinking violet content to remain in the shadows. She enjoyed the luxurious gifts, designer bags, diamond necklaces, and romantic getaways, but she also wanted more emotional investment. At times, her phone calls and texts became incessant, and Michael had to juggle her demands with Emily's needs. He told himself it was worth the risk. Emily, at home in the Hollywood Hills, was preparing for the baby's arrival, while Veronica kindled a fire in him he hadn't felt in years. Occasionally, guilt gnawed at Michael, especially when he'd see Emily's face light up as she showed him the paint swatches for the nursery or gently placed his hand on her growing belly so he could feel the baby's soft kicks. He'd force a smile, reassure her that he loved her, and promise he'd be home more often after this busy quarter. But the following week, he'd be sneaking off again, feeding his addiction for Veronica's company. The turning point came when Michael decided to buy Veronica an expensive piece of jewelry. He visited Connor and Brinley in Beverly Hills and chose a one-of-a-kind diamond necklace, inscribed with "To my queen, always." Veronica's reaction was pure, radiant delight, a validation of his generosity and affection. She whispered it was the best gift she'd ever received and that no man had treated her so lavishly before. Yet, even in that moment of triumph, Michael felt an internal quake of anxiety. Where to hide the receipt? Where to keep the necklace until their next rendezvous? The last thing he wanted was to fuel Emily's suspicion. He had sensed her unease, noticed the way she sometimes lingered near his phone or scrolled through his calendar, but he convinced himself he could outsmart her. He placed the necklace in a locked drawer in his study, hidden behind financial documents. It was reckless, but he was certain Emily would be too preoccupied with baby preparations to go snooping. If only he knew how wrong he was. Emily's intuition was rarely wrong. It wasn't that she imagined the worst about people. She was simply observant, a skill honed during her architecture studies, where every detail of a blueprint mattered, had translated into a keen eye for subtle changes in her surroundings. Now, standing in the study where she had discovered the mysterious necklace, Emily felt an unspoken truth looming. She recalled the night she found that diamond necklace. How could she forget the name inscribed or the date on the case? She told herself it might be a postponed anniversary surprise. But deep in her heart, the logic didn't add up. Had Michael really missed their anniversary date with no explanation? And if he planned to surprise her with this gift, wouldn't he have given it to her already? Pregnancy made her emotions more intense, but it also gave her a sense of protectiveness. She felt a fierce need to safeguard her unborn child from any form of deception. During a routine checkup at Cedars Sinai Medical Center, Emily's obstetrician, Dr. Amanda Jew, advised her to minimize stress for a healthy pregnancy. The advice echoed ominously in her mind. She decided she couldn't ignore the signs. One day, she confided in her best friend, Rachel Connor, no relation to the Connor in Connor and Brinley, though Rachel jokingly claimed she'd love that fortune. Over mugs of decaf coffee in Emily's sunlit kitchen, Emily poured out her suspicions. Rachel, ever the supportive friend, was outraged. "I know you trust him, Em, but something is off," Rachel said, tapping her manicured fingernails on the marble countertop. "You owe it to yourself and the baby to find out the truth." Emily didn't want to become the paranoid, jealous wife, but the unanswered questions kept stacking up, and Michael's demeanor had changed. He'd grown distant, glued to his phone, stepping out to take calls at odd hours. As the weeks rolled on, he began mentioning yet another business trip, this time to Santa Barbara, claiming a critical meeting with a potential investor. "We're expanding," Michael said, barely looking up from his phone. "It's a big opportunity, but I promise it's the last trip for a while." Emily mustered a strained smile. "You've said that before. Trust me, honey. This one is important. We land this account, and we won't have to worry about money for the baby's future. Not that we ever would, but you know what I mean." Emily nodded mechanically, her heart constricted. She'd decided she wouldn't confront Michael without proof. Instead, she planned to quietly gather evidence. She began by checking his credit card statements, a task she normally left to their accountant. A few questionable charges stood out: luxury hotels in Los Angeles and Malibu on the same dates he'd claimed to be in Chicago or New York. There were also charges from Mastro's Ocean Club on nights he'd told her he was networking in San Francisco. Feeling her pulse race, Emily realized Michael was lying about his whereabouts. But the question was, why? And who was he spending time with? Late at night, while Michael was asleep, she carefully scrolled through his phone's call logs. He'd protected it with a new passcode. In a stroke of luck, she guessed it on her second try, her birthday, ironically enough. Dozens of calls and messages to a single unsaved number littered the log. Some texts read innocently enough, but the frequency was alarming. In one message, she caught a glimpse of a reservation confirmation for dinner at a restaurant in Santa Barbara, a date that corresponded exactly with his business trip. The name of the restaurant was Caruso's, a famed coastal spot known for romantic dinners. Her hands trembled. Michael had reserved a table for two. Emily felt tears stinging her eyes. Yet, she refused to melt into despair. Anger, determination, and heartbreak boiled inside her in equal measure. She closed her eyes, recalling Dr. Zhu's words about avoiding stress. But how could she, when her life felt like it was unraveling? She prayed for courage. In that moment, a plan began forming in her mind. She would follow Michael on his trip, show up in Santa Barbara unannounced. If her suspicions were unfounded, then she'd appear as a loving, impulsive wife. If they were true, she'd face the ugliest truth head-on. The next morning, while packing her own small overnight bag, Emily pretended everything was normal. Michael kissed her goodbye with the same practiced ease he'd shown for months. She returned the kiss, biting back her tears. He got into his sleek, black Tesla, merging onto the freeway for what he believed to be another successful deception. But Emily was already making arrangements for her own transportation. With her heart pounding, she dialed Rachel. "Rake," Emily said shakily, "I need you to book me a hotel in Santa Barbara, near Caruso's, if possible, and please keep this between us." Rachel didn't hesitate. "I'm on it. Whatever you need." Emily breathed a sigh of relief, reminded that even in this swirling storm of doubt, she wasn't alone. She had people who loved her, who would help her uncover the truth. Now she just had to gather the courage to confront whatever she would find in Santa Barbara. Michael's drive to Santa Barbara was filled with anticipation. Every mile brought him closer to Veronica. She had texted him earlier that morning, "Can't wait to see you, my love. We'll have an unforgettable weekend." He smiled to himself, phone perched on the dashboard. The tension he'd been feeling at home melted away, replaced by the exhilarating thought of a weekend of indulgence and pleasure. His mind drifted to the memory of his last escape with Veronica at a ritzy hotel in Laguna Beach. The ocean view, the lavish room service, and the endless bottles of champagne. She had a magnetic presence that made him lose track of time and responsibilities. In her company, he felt like he was living life on the edge, unbounded by rules. By early afternoon, Michael arrived at the exclusive Rosewood Miramar Beach Resort. He strolled into the lobby with its high ceilings and elegant chandeliers. He checked in under the name Mr. and Mrs. Harrington, a strategy designed to limit questions from hotel staff. If a front desk clerk saw them strolling hand in hand, they would assume it was a married couple. Veronica was waiting in the lobby, wearing a figure-hugging red dress that showcased her curves. With her sultry smile and expertly styled hair, she turned heads. She and Michael locked eyes, and a spark of adrenaline coursed through him. He momentarily forgot Emily's worried face, the guilt gnawing at him, and the fact that his unborn child kicked in her belly back in Los Angeles. They embraced, and Michael whispered, "I've missed you." Veronica's eyes danced with excitement. "Me too. Let's have some fun." They swept up to their suite, an ocean view room that opened onto a private terrace overlooking the shimmering Pacific. Veronica wasted no time. She pressed against him, her lips meeting his in a feverish kiss. The moral lines Michael had drawn once upon a time were now all but erased. Hours later, they dressed for dinner at Caruso's, a high-end restaurant known for its exquisite coastal cuisine and romantic ambience. It was exactly the kind of spot Michael enjoyed when he wanted to dazzle Veronica. Over succulent seafood and a bottle of vintage wine, they laughed, talked about future escapades, and shared inside jokes about the tech world. Michael's phone buzzed a few times during dinner, Emily trying to contact him. He quickly set his phone to silent. "Work," he lied to Veronica, who raised a perfectly arched eyebrow but said nothing. She knew the rules of this game. They didn't talk about Emily or the baby. After the meal, they strolled hand in hand on the moonlit beach. Veronica teased him about the lines of worry etched into his forehead. "You need to relax," she cooed. "Stop carrying the world on your shoulders for one night." Michael inhaled the salty air, letting her words sink in. He glanced at the picturesque moonlit waves and felt invincible, like the rules of ordinary life didn't apply to him. Back in their suite, they opened another bottle of champagne. Veronica insisted on a toast. "To us," she said, raising her flute, "to living life on our own terms." Michael clinked glasses with her, ignoring the pang of guilt that pricked his conscience. Meanwhile, Emily was on the road, a few hours behind Michael, her nerves frayed as she inched closer to the truth. She arrived in Santa Barbara by late evening, having secured a last-minute room at a modest inn nearby, nothing as lavish as the resort, but close enough for her plan. She felt nauseous, unsure if it was the pregnancy or the dread of what she might discover. She checked in quietly, then placed a call to Rachel. "I'm here," she whispered, pacing around the small room. "I'm really going to do this." "Take deep breaths," Rachel advised. "You don't have to do anything tonight. Just see if his car is in the hotel lot or something." Emily nodded, fighting back tears. She was scared, yet the thought of letting another night go by without answers was unbearable. She opened her laptop, scanning through the photos of the Rosewood Miramar Beach Resort. She recognized it from a travel magazine. It was luxurious, a place that cost more per night than the average person's monthly rent. It wasn't Michael's typical business hotel. She'd expected something like the Hilton or Marriott. He had specifically chosen a place best suited for a romantic getaway. Emily's stomach churned as a fresh wave of suspicion all but confirmed what she feared. Putting on a coat, she slipped out into the night. The crisp coastal air provided a brief moment of clarity. She took a ride-share to the resort, wanting to see for herself if Michael's Tesla was in the parking lot. She found it easily. The sleek black vehicle was parked in a prime spot, as if he'd arrived earlier in the day. Adrenaline surged through her veins. There it was, undeniable proof that Michael was at this resort under false pretenses. But she still didn't know with whom. She surveyed the rows of cars, her imagination running wild. Should she confront him now? Storm into the lobby, demand to see her husband? The thought rattled her. Images of Michael with another woman flashed in her mind, but she also considered the child growing inside her. If she caused a scene, the stress could harm the baby. She wrapped her arms around herself, tears silently spilling down her cheeks. Emily took a shaky breath and turned back. She decided to return to her inn for the night, gather her strength, and devise a calmer approach for the next day. But as she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that the man she loved was just a few floors above, in another woman's arms. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Michael and Veronica's suite. The soft ocean breeze carried the scent of salt water, a gentle reminder they were far from the prying eyes of Los Angeles. Michael stirred awake first, blinking against the brightness. Veronica slept beside him, her hair fanned across the pillow, her lips parted in a peaceful expression. For a moment he felt a pang of regret, but memories of the night before, of laughter, champagne, and stolen kisses overpowered any guilt. He slipped out of bed to check his phone. A flood of missed calls from Emily made his stomach twist. His thoughts wrestled between duty and desire. He typed a quick text to Emily. "Hey, sorry about yesterday, got pulled into meetings until late. How are you feeling today?" Within seconds, Emily replied, "Where are you?" Michael hesitated, then typed his carefully crafted lie, "Santa Barbara, sweetheart. I'm meeting investors all weekend, but I'll be back Monday morning." He could practically sense her displeasure through the phone. Nonetheless, he left it at that. Tucking his phone away, he decided to indulge in a leisurely morning with Veronica before business demanded his attention. Meanwhile, in a small inn a few miles away, Emily had barely slept. She sat by the window, her laptop open, scanning news about Michael's company. She found no mention of an investor conference in Santa Barbara. Her heart clenched at the confirmation. His trip was purely personal. Rachel's voice rang through her mind, urging her to take a step back and consider her options. Emily felt torn. Should she confront him immediately or gather more evidence to ensure there was no room for denial? She recalled that Michael had a dinner reservation at Caruso's the previous night, which meant they might not dine there again soon. Perhaps she could catch them at breakfast or lunch. She knew Michael's habits. He favored top-tier dining experiences, and the resort's oceanfront restaurant was among the best. Determined, she dressed in a loose-fitting sundress that concealed her growing bump. Her reflection in the mirror revealed a tired but resolute woman. She tucked her hair under a wide-brimmed hat, hoping to remain inconspicuous. A short ride. Cher brought her back to the Rosewood Miramar Beach Resort. This time, she didn't linger in the parking lot. Instead, she marched into the lobby, heart pounding. Veronica and Michael were finishing breakfast at the hotel restaurant when Emily arrived. Michael had chosen a table on the outdoor terrace with a view of the shoreline. He was sipping coffee, wearing a casual linen shirt, while Veronica, in a breezy sundress, leaned forward, her fingers tracing circles on the back of his hand. Emily stepped onto the terrace. At first, she saw just a sea of faces, other couples, families, a few single business travelers. Then she spotted them, Michael's familiar profile, the tilt of his head as he laughed at something Veronica said. Time seemed to slow. The world blurred around her as she locked eyes on the sight of her husband with a beautiful stranger. Veronica whispered something, leaning closer to Michael, and Emily felt an almost physical pain in her chest. She struggled to maintain composure, clenching her fists so tightly her nails dug into her palms. Every fiber of her being screamed for her to run up to them, shout, demand an explanation, but she held herself in check for fear of causing a public scene that would spiral out of control. She wanted proof, undeniable, clear proof. Emily took a seat at a nearby table, grateful for the large hat hiding her face. She ordered a simple orange juice, though she had no appetite. Her eyes never left Michael and Veronica. They looked comfortable together, like a real couple on vacation. Her heart shattered with every affectionate touch, every tender smile. As they finished their meal, Michael leaned in and planted a lingering kiss on Veronica's lips. Emily's stomach twisted, tears welling in her eyes. She willed herself to remain stoic, but the betrayal she witnessed was like a dagger to her heart. They got up to leave. Emily ducked, feigning interest in her phone. She watched through the brim of her hat as Michael and Veronica exited the terrace. She inhaled shakily, her mind racing. She had seen enough, more than enough. Pressing a trembling hand against her belly, she whispered to herself, "Stay calm. The baby needs me to be calm." Her decision was made in that moment. She wouldn't confront Michael in public, not here, surrounded by strangers. If she caused a scene, Veronica might slip away, and Michael would dismiss it as a misunderstanding. No, she needed a more strategic approach. A moment where the truth would be undeniable and witnessed by others. She paid for her orange juice and slipped out of the restaurant. Her next step was to gather the courage and the right timing. She called Rachel. "Rach, I saw him," Emily said, voice quavering. "He's with her, a woman named Veronica." "Emily, I'm so sorry," Rachel consoled. "What are you going to do?" Emily swallowed hard. "I'm going to check out of my inn. I can't handle another night of this. I need to confront him." But confrontation was easier said than done. Emily's heart pounded with equal parts fear, sadness, and adrenaline. She considered the ramifications, their marriage, their unborn child, their families, and the swirling media that might feast on this scandal if it ever went public. Still, she had no intention of letting Michael continue his web of lies. That evening, Michael and Veronica were set to attend an exclusive wine tasting event hosted in the resort's private garden. They arrived fashionably late, arms looped around each other. Fairy lights twinkled in the manicured hedges, and a gentle breeze carried the aromatic scent of roses. Guests in designer attire circulated, sipping on limited edition wines and nibbling on gourmet hors d'oeuvre. Michael felt a rush of pride as people recognized him. A few even approached to talk business, though he deftly steered the conversations toward lighter topics to maintain the romantic ambience. Veronica, radiant in a navy gown, dazzled the crowd with her quick wit and engaging laugh. Unbeknownst to them, Emily had also arrived. She wore a simple yet elegant black dress. Her face was pale, and her heart hammered in her chest, but her resolve was unshakable. She navigated through the crowd with careful purpose, spotting Michael's tall figure near a display of vintage Cabernet Sauvignon. She approached quietly, capturing the moment with her phone camera from a distance. She had a clear angle, Michael whispering something in Veronica's ear, Veronica laughing, her hand resting on his chest. Every snapshot was another piece of undeniable evidence. Summoning her courage, Emily stepped forward. With shaky fingers, she tucked her phone back into her clutch and softly called out, "Michael!" Michael froze. Recognition swept across his features as he turned. His face paled when he saw his wife. In that instant, Veronica followed his gaze. The color drained from her cheeks. She quickly slid her hand off Michael's chest, eyes darting between the spouses in alarm. Emily," Michael stammered, his voice hoarse. What are you doing here?" Emily forced herself to stand tall, fighting the tears threatening to spill. "I might ask you the same question. This doesn't look like a business meeting." She cast a scathing glance at Veronica, who instinctively took a step back. A few onlookers sensed the tension, pausing their conversations. The soft murmur of the crowd became a hushed lull. Michael's grip tightened around his wineglass. "Let's talk about this privately," he whispered, panic evident in his eyes. Emily folded her arms, her voice quavering yet firm. "Why, Michael? Why not have everyone hear it? You've been lying to me for months, gallivanting around with her." She pointed at Veronica. "I've had to watch you parade your mistress in public like I don't exist." Veronica raised her hands, alarmed. "Look, I didn't. She seemed uncertain how to proceed, eyes flicking from Michael to Emily. Michael reached for Emily's arm. "Emily, calm down. We can discuss this somewhere else. Please." But Emily pulled away, stepping back. "No, I'm done being quiet. You lied to me about this trip, about so many trips. You told me you were doing all of this for our future, our baby's future, but you were here with your mistress." A ripple of shock went through the onlookers. Whispered comments and sideways glances spread like wildfire. Emily's tears finally escaped, rolling down her cheeks. Michael's face contorted with desperation. Emily, let's just... Oh, don't you dare try to explain now. Emily's voice rose. She placed a hand protectively over her belly. I'm pregnant with our child, and you thought you could throw me aside for some fling? Veronica bristled. I am not just a fling. Emily leveled her gaze at the other woman, eyes blazing. Oh, my apologies, he must have told you you're special. I'm his wife, carrying his child. So let's just say neither one of us is in a good position. Tension crackled in the air. A staff member tried to intervene, but Michael waved him off, brow beaded with sweat. He realized any attempt to hush this scene would only cause more speculation. In a voice laced with regret, he reached out to Emily once more. Please, for the baby, let's step outside. Emily clenched her jaw. She surveyed the guests, feeling their stares like daggers. Part of her wanted to fling more accusations, to let Michael and Veronica feel the full weight of her betrayal in the public eye. Another part of her, a part fueled by maternal instinct, reminded her that too much stress wasn't good for her health. She turned on her heel. Fine, but don't think for a second this is going away. Michael hastily excused himself from the gathering, mumbling apologies to the startled guests. Veronica stood there momentarily, uncertain if she should follow. Ultimately, she did, trailing behind them into a secluded courtyard. Away from the public gaze, the tension seemed to thicken. Emily's tear-stained face glowed under the courtyard lamps. Michael swallowed hard, hating the despair in her eyes. This isn't what it looks like, he began, voice trembling. Emily let out a bitter laugh. Really? Because it looks like you've been cheating on your pregnant wife. Veronica stepped forward, voice shaking. Michael told me you were separated, that you were only staying together for the baby, but the marriage was effectively over. Emily's head snapped toward Michael, eyes burning. Is that what you told her? Michael's mouth opened and closed, lost for words. Finally, he admitted softly, I never said we were separated. 1. I might have implied things were complicated. Veronica's cheeks flared with color. This is unbelievable, Michael. You said you'd leave her once the baby was born, that I just needed to be patient. Emily's world tilted. The pain surged through her, leaving her dizzy. She steadied herself against a stone bench, her breath ragged. How long, Michael? She whispered. How long have you been lying to me? He ran a hand through his hair. It started a few months ago. It was just, I don't know, I got caught up in the excitement. Veronica offered me something I felt was missing. It was never supposed to go this far. Veronica's eyes flashed with anger. Are you saying I was just a fling? Michael looked torn between them. No, I mean, yes, Emily couldn't take any more. The stress, the betrayal, the heartbreak, it was all too much. She swayed, feeling her vision blur. Alarmed, Michael rushed forward, catching her before she collapsed. We need to get you to a doctor, he said, panic rising. Emily clutched her abdomen, her face pale. Stay away from me, she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. I never want to see you again. Veronica stood frozen, uncertain whether to step forward or leave. Michael, torn between guilt and concern for his wife, could barely articulate a response. The emotional storm unleashed its full fury in that courtyard, setting off a chain of events none of them could fully control. The next hours were a blur. Michael insisted on driving Emily to the local hospital, but she refused to ride with him. Alarmed staff at the resort called an ambulance when they saw Emily's distress. Paramedics loaded her gently onto a stretcher, while Michael followed in his Tesla at a distance, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Veronica, overwhelmed, slipped away silently, unsure of her place in the crisis unfolding. At the hospital, Emily was examined by doctors who monitored the baby's heartbeat and checked her vitals. Fortunately, there was no immediate danger to the pregnancy, but the doctor warned that emotional turmoil and stress could have dire consequences if it continued. They advised rest and relaxation, prescribing mild sedatives if necessary. Emily, exhausted and emotionally shattered, lay in the hospital bed. A nurse suggested calling her next of kin. She provided her parents' number and Rachel's. She explicitly told them not to allow Michael inside until she was ready. Outside, in a starkly lit hallway, Michael paced. His heart hammered in his chest, guilt crushing him. He had jeopardized everything: his wife's health, his unborn child, his marriage for a relationship he could barely define. Rachel arrived within hours, out of breath and furious. Her glare at Michael as she swept past him to Emily's room spoke volumes. He wanted to speak with Emily, explain, apologize, anything, but the nurse blocked him. "Sir," the patient asked, "not to be disturbed by you," she said politely but firmly. Michael felt a fresh wave of despair. He sank into a chair in the waiting area, burying his face in his hands. The harsh overhead lights made his eyes ache. Images of Emily's pained face and the knowledge he was responsible tormented him. Meanwhile, Veronica texted him sporadically, "I'm sorry. Let me know if Emily is okay," followed by, "I never wanted this to happen." He couldn't bring himself to reply. Shame clenched his gut. For the first time, the gravity of his actions weighed fully on him. In Emily's hospital room, Rachel held her hand. Emily stared at the ceiling, eyes raw from crying. She spoke in a soft monotone. "I saw them." He kissed her. They were so comfortable together," Emily murmured. Rachel squeezed her hand gently. "I'm so sorry, Em. No one deserves this, least of all you." Emily closed her eyes, letting out a tremulous sigh. "I can't believe I've been so blind. I found the receipts, the necklace, I even suspected, but I clung to hope that it was all just a misunderstanding." A tear slipped down her cheek. "He chose this. He chose her over me and our baby." Rachel shook her head. "He's a fool, Emily. Don't think for a second this is your fault." Emily nodded, half listening. Her thoughts drifted to the future, imagining raising her baby alone, forging a life without Michael's presence. It was both terrifying and strangely liberating. The doctors kept Emily overnight for observation. Through the night, she drifted in and out of sleep, plagued by nightmares of Michael and Veronica laughing at her pain. Each time she woke, she felt the reassuring grip of Rachel's hand and the beep of the fetal monitor. Michael, helpless, called Emily's parents to update them on her condition. Her father, Robert Porter, unleashed a tirade, threatening legal action and condemning Michael's betrayal. Her mother, Marianne, broke down sobbing on the phone, lamenting the harm done to their daughter. By morning, Emily was stable enough to be discharged. She refused Michael's offer to drive her. Instead, Rachel picked her up, helping her gather her belongings. Before leaving, Emily asked to see Michael for a brief moment, though she looked resigned rather than forgiving. They met in a private consultation room, its walls painted a dull beige. Michael's eyes brimmed with unshed tears as he stepped forward. Emily maintained a stoic distance, arms crossed. "I'm so sorry," Michael began, his voice breaking. "I never wanted to hurt you or our baby. I got in too deep. It was a mistake." "Stop," Emily interrupted, her tone flat. "I know you're sorry, but sorry doesn't fix what you've done. You need to understand that. You've broken my trust, Michael, and I don't know if I can ever forgive you." Michael opened his mouth, but no words came out. He bowed his head. Emily pressed her lips together, tears threatening to return. "I need space. I'm going back to my parents, for a while. I suggest you don't try to find me until I'm ready." Michael's voice was hoarse. "Please, Emily, at least let me help with the baby. I still want to be a father." She let out a soft, mirthless laugh. "You should have thought of that before lying to me." She turned to leave, pausing at the door. "Take this time to figure out what you really want, Michael, because I'm not staying in a marriage built on deceit." With that, she walked out, not daring to look back. Michael was left alone, the echo of her footsteps reverberating in his mind like a final judgment. In the weeks that followed, Emily found refuge at her parents' home in Westwood. The comforting familiarity of her childhood room provided a small measure of solace. Marianne fussed over her, making sure she ate enough for both her and the baby. Robert, though outraged at Michael, tried to remain calm for his daughter's sake. Emily began therapy sessions with a counselor recommended by Dr. Ju, hoping to navigate the tidal wave of emotions, the betrayal, anger, confusion, and lingering heartbreak. She also met with a family lawyer, Linda Neumann, to discuss her options. Divorce was on the table, along with questions about custody and child support. Each day, Michael sent messages to Emily, professing his regret and begging for another chance. He went so far as to cut off contact with Veronica, telling her the affair was over. But Emily had no interest in hearing his pleas. She read his messages through tearful eyes, but never replied. Veronica also found herself in a difficult spot. Colleagues at her PR firm whispered about the scandal. Some clients distanced themselves, not wanting to be associated with a homewrecker. She called Michael repeatedly, either to apologize or to rekindle his affections, he was never certain which, because he often let the calls go unanswered. One afternoon, Emily received a surprise phone call from John Fitzgerald, the real estate mogul in Glendale, who was a long-time business associate of Michael's. She remembered him from her wedding, where he'd given a gushing toast about partnerships in life and business. "Emily," he said gently, "I'm so sorry about everything. I just want you to know that I've seen a change in Michael over the last few weeks. He's been distant, refusing new deals, practically living in his office. He's cut off ties with that woman." And Emily's grip on the phone tightened. "John, I appreciate your concern, but I can't pretend everything is fine. I understand. I'm not defending what he did. But if there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. You're both my friends, and this is heartbreaking to watch." Emily thanked him politely and hung up, overwhelmed by the complexity. She knew Michael was suffering, but it didn't erase the agony he'd caused. In the meantime, Linda Neumann's legal counsel was straightforward. Emily could file for divorce on grounds of infidelity. Michael, given his wealth, would be obligated to provide substantial child support. Custody arrangements could be negotiated, but Emily would likely receive primary custody unless Michael contested. The potential legal battle loomed. Emily struggled with the decision. She felt a wave of guilt, remembering the love they once shared, the dreams they had for their child. But every time she recalled Santa Barbara, her resolve hardened. Finally, she called Linda and said, "I want to file for divorce, but let's hold off on full custody negotiations until the baby is born. I need time to see if Michael can truly change," Linda agreed. The papers were drafted. They arrived by courier one chilly morning, and Emily's heart tightened as she placed her signature on the dotted line. When Michael received the divorce papers in his office, he felt the weight of his world collapsing. He stared at his phone, wanting to call Emily, to beg her not to do this. But he knew she was steadfast. He had lost her trust, and regaining it might be impossible. That night, alone in his penthouse, Michael poured himself a whiskey and stared out at the last skyline. He recalled the days when Emily's laughter filled their home, how she would greet him with a warm hug, no matter how late he came back from work. He regretted chasing the thrill of an affair that, in hindsight, paled compared to the life he shared with his wife. He resolved to try one last time, to prove to Emily he could be a man worthy of fatherhood. As Emily's pregnancy advanced into its 7th month, her belly grew, and with it, a sense of both dread and anticipation for the future. She joined prenatal classes in Westwood, forging friendships with other expectant mothers who offered emotional support. Michael, in an attempt to redeem himself, started showing up uninvited, offering to drive her to appointments to help with baby supplies. Emily usually refused, yet she noticed small gestures like Michael quietly covering her medical bills or sending baby essentials to her parents' doorstep. Her father bristled each time a package arrived, calling it a bribe. But Emily wasn't so sure. Michael's messages had shifted from pleas for forgiveness to updates on how he was dismantling certain parts of his lifestyle, selling the penthouse, stepping down from day-to-day operations at his tech firm, focusing on therapy. "I'm trying to be better," he wrote in a text. "For you, for our child. I know it might be too late, but I have to do this." Emily wasn't ready to open the door to reconciliation. Yet, a tiny part of her, still bound by memories of their love, wondered if people could truly change. Then came a crisis that none of them anticipated. At 32 weeks pregnant, Emily woke one morning to intense abdominal pain. She tried to stand, but dizziness overwhelmed her, and she collapsed to the floor. Her mother called 911, and Emily was rushed to the emergency room. Michael got the call while he was at a counseling session. Panic gripped him. He raced to the hospital, not caring if Emily wanted him there or not. When he arrived, he found her in labor and delivery, monitors beeping urgently. Doctors suspected premature labor triggered by stress and a possible placental complication. Terror seized Emily as contractions rippled through her body. She wasn't supposed to give birth this early. She sobbed, calling out for her mother and father. Michael burst into the room moments later, face etched with fear. "Emily," he whispered, tears glistening in his eyes. "I'm here." She looked at him, vulnerable and terrified. Part of her wanted to scream at him to leave, but another part clung to him. This was the father of her child, and in this perilous moment, she needed all the support she could get. The hours that followed were filled with medical interventions, the fourth drips, and stern directions from doctors urging Emily to stay calm. They administered medication to slow the contractions and help the baby's lungs mature. Michael sat beside her hospital bed, holding her hand, tears slipping silently down his cheeks. "I'm so sorry," he whispered over and over. "This is all my fault." Exhausted and in pain, Emily tried to breathe through the contractions. Through the haze, she felt Michael's presence. Despite everything, she drew some comfort from his hand in hers. Eventually, the medications took effect, and the contractions subsided. The doctor informed them that the baby was still at risk, but had stabilized for now. They would keep Emily in the hospital on bed rest until delivery could be safely induced. As her parents hovered near, Emily finally spoke to Michael, her voice trembling. "Thank you for staying." He pressed her hand gently. "I wouldn't be anywhere else." The tension of the last few months didn't vanish in that moment. The betrayal, the heartbreak, they still existed. But amidst the fear for their unborn child's life, a fragile understanding formed between them. That night, Michael slept in a chair beside her bed. Emily drifted in and out, sometimes finding him awake, staring at her with haunted eyes. She didn't have the strength to argue or ask him to leave. Some part of her was thankful he remained. Over the next few weeks, Emily stayed in the hospital, monitored constantly. Michael visited daily, bringing fresh flowers and books to read. They spoke cautiously, avoiding the glaring topic of the affair and focusing on their child's future. Some days were tense. Emily would recall the pain of betrayal, her anger flaring. Other times, when Michael made her laugh with a silly anecdote or rubbed her feet as the swelling increased, she felt the faintest stirrings of the bond they once shared. Rachel noticed the shift. When she visited, she found Michael quietly reading pregnancy guidelines or practicing breathing exercises with Emily. "This is surreal," Rachel remarked. "A few weeks ago I wanted to throw you off a cliff." Michael gave a rueful half-smile. "I deserved that. I probably still do." The day finally arrived when the doctors decided it was safe to induce labor. Michael and Emily faced the moment together, hands tightly clasped. After hours of labor, interspersed with both excruciating pain and hopeful anticipation, their daughter arrived, a wailing bundle of new life. Tears streaked Emily's face as they placed the tiny infant in her arms. The baby's cries softened as she nestled against her mother. Michael stood beside them, his heart in his throat. He tentatively reached out a finger, and the baby grasped it with surprising strength. A sense of awe filled the room. For a brief time, all the pain, betrayal, and anger seemed dwarfed by this new life. In the days that followed, Emily focused on her recovery and caring for their daughter, whom they named Lily. Michael stayed nearby, assisting with diaper changes, midnight feedings, and anything else Emily needed. He didn't press her about the divorce or the affair. He simply tried to be the best father he could. When Emily was discharged, she returned to her parents' house with Lily. Michael visited daily, respecting her boundaries, never staying too long. Gradually, he and Emily had conversations, raw, painful discussions about trust, commitment, and regret. "I can't promise we'll ever be what we were," Emily told him one afternoon, as Lily napped in her crib. "That part of us might be gone forever." Michael nodded, tears in his eyes. "I understand. And if that's the price for what I did, I'll live with it. But I want to be here for you and Lily, however you'll let me." Emily looked at her sleeping baby, then at Michael. For the first time, she considered the possibility of forging a different relationship, a co-parenting partnership, if not a romantic one. The raw wound of betrayal might eventually scar over, but the memory would remain. They sat together quietly, the weight of their unspoken future resting between them. Outside, the afternoon sun poured through the window, illuminating the small family gathered around a crib. An uncertain future beckoned, full of potential pitfalls and faint glimmers of hope. Michael Harrington's fall from grace was swift and painful, yet it served as a powerful reminder that secrets can shatter even the most glamorous illusions. Emily's heartbreak led her to discover reserves of inner strength she never knew she had. Although divorce papers had been signed, the arrival of their daughter, Lily, opened the door for cautious collaboration, if not a perfect reunion. Only time would tell whether forgiveness could ever replace the pain of betrayal. And so, dear viewers, we leave you with a final question. Can love endure when trust is broken? Or do some betrayals cut too deep to mend? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were moved by this real-life drama fiction, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support keeps us inspired to bring you more captivating stories, each one a reminder of life's twists and the power of human resilience. Thank you for watching.